welcome to Pages. I'm your host, Chasity Evans. Today on the show, we have a very special guest. We have a Clark Atlanta University alum, Miss Marcia Jones-Cross. How are you doing today, Miss Cross?
Well, great, thank you.
Good. We're glad to see that you came on the show. Tell us a little bit about Survival in the Sea of the White, and exactly how did you come up with that unique theme?
Well, Survival in the Sea of White has a lot to do with my experiences when I was working at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. I was a young, single female working in public relations at Dartmouth College, and I went through a lot because I saw really what racism really looked like when I was up there. And not only that was being a public relations person and trying to put on the best face for a school, but also being sort of my unpaid job, being the advisor to the African American students. It really put me in a very interesting situation.
Definitely.
And so when I left there, it was kind of cathartic for me to be able to just kind of put to words what actually I experienced up there. And also just the fact that there are just so many situations like that are still occurring here, even in 2011.
Wow. So that was back in the 80s.
Correct.
Right? And you still see that same face, now.
In 2011.
Absolutely.
I wonder, why is that?
I think unfortunately on a lot of these campuses, there's still a hostile environment. Students are made to feel, students of color, and it's not just African American students, but students of color are made to feel often that they are taking somebody's place. When they go to various campuses. That's what I used to hear when I was up at Dartmouth. And I think now, just the way you see how the system is now, you see financial aid is failing, and our students are really having to really struggle to try to even be in college. And when they're there and they do well, you still have people, the majority, who feels like you don't really need to be there.
Yeah.
So it's really a sad commentary.
That it definitely is, and you're absolutely right, because we are, struggling to fail, and when we do decide to make good grades and strive in college, they decide to take the different scholarships or grants up a little bit higher, which makes it even more, inefficient for us to receive them.
Absolutely.
So what decided to make, what made you, in your mind, decide that you wanted to become an author?
Well, my background, I'm an alum of, as you said in my introduction, I'm an alum of Clark Atlanta University, and I've always loved to write. Of course, most of my writing has been journalistic or public relations. I used to write a lot of poetry and still do. And so the next phase for me was, well, why not be an author? I think basically we all have a story, and I felt like I wanted to share my story with others, because in sharing my story, it allowed others to talk about, to have a discussion about, what not only goes on in colleges and universities, but what goes on in corporate America. I've had so many different discussions, and people have related to certain experiences that I talk about in this book.
Hands can do incredible things. Now they can even help save a life with hands-only CPR. If you see an adult suddenly collapse, just call 911, then push hard and fast in the center of the chest until help arrives. Learn more at handsonlycpr.org.
Lead paint poisoning affects over 1 million children today. Dust from lead-based paint could cause violent behavior. If your home was built before 1978, log on to leadfreekids.org.
Survival in the Sea of White. Who is the main character, and what different challenges does she face during this episode?
The main character is Melissa Johnson, and she's an African-American female, single, in her late 20s, and she's a public relations professional. She is working at Dartmouth College in the public relations office, and she, some of her challenges that she had first of all had to do with her boss. Her boss was, Melissa really wanted to move up. You know, she saw an opportunity about 3 months after she got there to be able to move into an associate director position. She asked the boss about moving up into that position or being considered for it, and he told her he thought that she was moving too fast and that she had a yuppie mentality and that she was driving around in her Mazda 626, and she, you know, really, when he was her age, he was not making the money that she made.
That's an extreme poor excuse.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow.
So that was one of the first challenges that Melissa had. The second challenge had to do with the fact that she was in public relations there. And so being in public relations, you're put on the best face for your institution. But her unpaid job was she was also the advisor to the African American students. And at the time when she was up there, the latter part of the time she was up there, there was a racial incident that happened where an African American professor, music professor, who was tenured, had been there over 20 years, was being challenged by sort of this conservative right group of Caucasian students in terms of his class. He taught a class in music, and he taught a class talking about how music was derived from pain, derived from people suffering, whether you are a minority, whether you're poor, whether you're Appalachian. That's what he talked about, and a lot of the students had a problem with that who were part of this conservative right. And so they verbally attacked him. They came to his classroom and verbally attacked him, and at that point the campus just fell apart. And so there Melissa was challenged with both having to be there for her students, but also to be a public relations person too. And we had media from all across the country. You know, I mean, 60 Minutes came up there, and you know, a lot of the local and Boston media and so forth. Everybody was up on the campus to find out what was going on, and so that was one of the biggest challenges for her, to try to balance, you know, professionally as well as personally, both her views as well as what she had to do.
So are we going to expect a sequel or another part of Survival in the Sea of White pretty soon?
I haven't. A lot of people have asked me that, and part of me has thought about that, particularly given the fact that there are just so many things that are still going on here, not necessarily at Dartmouth, but just across the country, across the world,
across the nation.
You know, in terms of racism, and racism. A lot of people want to believe that racism has stopped. It hasn't. You know, and to believe that, I mean, just look at what's going on, what happened in Mississippi recently, what's going on with our president, the things that are going on with our president, that wouldn't have been done to
any other president
at all. So, you know, I think that the subject needs to get out there still. It really does. It needs to be discussed, and it needs to be candid. You know, a lot of people don't want to be candid. They want to, you know, just kind of brush it off like nothing ever happened. But
Definitely.
I think there needs to be a lot of candor about it. So I'm thinking about it.
So are you working on anything in particular, you know, like now, like other than the Sea of White? Are you working on any other new books?
I'm working on a book called Scabs. And the reason that I came up with that particular title is while I was in Kansas City, was the church that I attended. The pastor there was talking about the fact that when he was a teenager, he used to fall off his bike, and he had this fascination with scabs, and he would, you know, just, you know, wouldn't let things heal. And he says some of us are walking around with 20-year scabs.
Wow.
And it really made me think not only about other people, but about myself. You know, that oftentimes we walk around and we don't like somebody for whatever reason, and is it really worth it? And so I really want to deal with the whole scab issue, because we all have scabs.
Yeah.
So that's my next.
And that's deep, like scabs. I would have never thought about that. You know, you normally would say pressure, or, you know, you're just walking around with a guilt trip or something like that. But scabs. The scabs. That's very interesting. Yeah. So when are we going to see you out again in the media-wise, social media? You know, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Well, I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Actually, I have a Twitter account, but I just haven't been using it. So. So I'm trying to do more with that now.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely do more with it.
And what type of author would you consider yourself? Would you consider yourself a contemporary, an urban, fictional, non-fictional, just targeted towards one race? What type of author would you consider yourself?
I think it's a combination of things. I mean, I think there are some women's issues that I like to talk about.
Okay.
I definitely think in terms of from a cultural standpoint, African American author, I would like to consider myself in that way.
Okay.
But I also would like to consider myself more of a motivation type author
Okay.
too.
Well, thank you so much,
Well,
Ms.
thank
Cross,
you.
for coming out and sharing with us the Survival in the Sea of White. We truly appreciate you, and we'll support you in all that you do in your other books to come.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
All right.